rolling.
What up, y'all, and welcome back to At the Table. So this is our first season of At the Table, and it's a different change up from the food videos, which we are going to be getting back into. The thing I like about Poddin is that we're able to have real conversations, and most of the time whenever we're filming stuff, we're just talking the entire time. So this is just an extension of what we've already been doing. I know I'm learning a whole lot, and watching television, you would think, oh man, interviewing is so easy. You see these people, I could be Oprah, I could be Ellen. There's an actual art to it. So as we wrap up the first season of At the Table, our first, 9 episodes?
Yeah.
We wanted to take a quick scroll down. Is it a scroll or is it a troll? Scroll down memory lane? It's a stroll. So we thought we'd do a stroll down memory lane, maybe 3 of the biggest aha moments or record scratch moments for us during this process. Jesse, why don't you go first?
Biggest record scratch aha moment for me, funny enough, was on the episode that was about my story. If you haven't checked out the episode yet, we talked about how I was in a cult. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, I'm telling my story, right? We're kind of going through everything. Our relationship went through this moment, and then we came to this church, and all this stuff happened to us, and we, and all this kind of stuff. And Kevin goes,
You used the words we. Why? It wasn't an issue for Abby. It was an issue for you. You used the words we. Why? It wasn't an issue for Abby. It was an issue for you.
yeah,
All right. Why are you letting that be a thorn in your side?
yeah.
What's going on with you
Mm-hmm.
where you feel the need to have, I guess, a stranger
Yeah.
not just lord over your life, but just to govern your life?
You know, I completely blended God and this pastor together. So for me to say, to go against him internally, to me felt like I would be doing something wrong to go against his advice. After, I guess, putting in the time and effort to still make Abby and I's relationship happen, and for him to still react that way was like the light bulb moment.
Yeah.
And that was just the beginning of the light bulb. Like, the light bulb was dim, and it started to get a lot brighter and brighter the more time I spent away from that place.
Realizing how toxic it was, or realizing
how toxic it was, and how much I was being manipulated, and how much I was being taken advantage of as well.
Yeah.
Like him being a master manipulator and being able to recognize a personality type that I have and traits that I have. You're right. Like, that stuff, those are choices that I had to make and I had to live with.
Right.
And I was able to learn a lot from that.
Wow.
But that was definitely a moment where I was kind of like, oh, the way my language is coming out right now is kind of how I'm coping with this and trying to justify my mistakes and the things that I did wrong.
Did you ever speak with Abby about that moment? Because I did think it was interesting that all the things that were done that you all were doing together, you were actually the one doing. Did she watch the episode in its entirety?
Yeah, she did. She watched it all, and she listened to it a few times too.
Ooh.
And so it's just one of those things. It's like, you know, she has a lot of sympathy and and grace for me for that time. She knows, but still, she's acknowledging that, like, yeah, that time was rough, and a lot of that stuff happened to her without her having any say in what was going on. There's my start for a scroll down memory lane.
Oh, all right. That was a little Oprah moment then. Yeah. I think the second one for me, I don't think that I've ever gotten this much feedback, I think offline as well, than the episode that we did about going vegan and stop eating like a slave with badass vegan John Lewis, who is an amazing friend. So 2 things that stood out in this moment. Let me just set it up for y'all. We're just talking, and I wanted to confront him about this post that he made. It was the Thanksgiving prior, and I think he makes this post almost every single year, but this particular year when I caught it, it just really just made me upset. Finally had the chance to confront him about it face to face, and this was our conversation. And it bothered me for several reasons. I just felt that it was disrespectful to the ancestors, in the sense that, like, especially when it comes around like to the holidays and making those special dishes around, a certain time of year. Part of that honoring is appreciating like where it comes from. So if people are preparing it in similar ways, I do agree, we don't have to do all of that. But to position it like that, I just thought was a line stepper. Now I've changed a little bit, but I want you to go ahead and explain that post.
So the post was,
and the recklessness of it.
The post was, if we aren't slaves anymore, why are we still eating like that? So that's what it was.
Yeah.
And to go along with what you're saying is that, you know, you felt that it was disrespectful to the slaves and what they went through. Enslaved people, because I'm working on terminology now. Those that were enslaved. But my take is, I think it's disrespectful to keep doing that. They were forced to do it.
Correct.
I think they went through the battleground and went through the fucked up shit, so we don't have to do it anymore. So it's like, I think it's more disrespectful to keep doing it when we don't have a whip on our back, when we're not living in a cottage. That's me. So it's like, our ancestors went through so much so that we wouldn't have to go through it anymore.
So we would have a choice.
But if the choice is not good for us,
well, that's your own interpretation, right? Because veganism.
That was my interpretation on my page, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Correct. Well, of also the food though, right? Because there are certain things, but if it's nuanced, right?
Right.
Because I actually tend to agree with you a little bit more. Right now, honestly,
that was like 4 years ago.
It does line up with the same thinking from earlier in the conversation, where it's like, even just whatever hunter gatherer, like even before slave times, it's like people all across the world ate what they had. You know, if you live near the ocean, you're eating a lot of fish.
Yeah.
If you live inland, you're eating cow. You're still eating vegetables and stuff like that. They didn't necessarily have a choice because they needed to survive.
Right.
But now we live in a day and age when
we do
have
have
a choice.
Yes, we got a choice.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
And I think a thing to realize too is there was a choice back then. The knowledge wasn't there. Not saying that anybody was stupid. It's just, I mean, look, like literally look at what we're doing right now. We're sitting at a table with cameras around, microphones.
Yeah.
They didn't have that fucking option back then.
Right.
If somebody did learn about a certain way to eat, a certain way to live, by the time they got the information, it was 100 years later, because it took that long for the information to get over to another. Like literally, by the time we post this, it's going to spread to 700 countries. I think there's only 260 something. Like, but whatever.
Yeah,
it's going to spread to everybody. So I think there's so many factors that we have to put into play for today that just wasn't there back then.
right.
And once we do that, and I think too, because I get emotional about shit too. Like, I've had to learn to like really take emotion out of a lot of stuff. Like, you know, like, I know that's an emotional topic to talk about what slaves eat and how they lived. But I also like, all right, would the enslaved people care about our feelings today, or would they care about us living our best life? You know what I'm saying? They're like, look, I went through this. Look what I went through for you to be like, you know what, cool, I'm going to have a double bacon.
Right.
And I'm taking Lipitor while I'm eating it.
Right. And that's what people do.
And
sadly. Now, I would say this, the only thing about that is that if people want to make that one time of year because it was grandma's recipe and whatnot, and this has been passed on, I don't think it's necessarily fair to put them in the same category as eating like a slave. Now, a person that was eating like a slave, first off, just that terminology, that actually means like a perpetual state. Like that is your regular diet. That's your, right?
Yeah.
But if I sit down at someone's house, at my mom's house, and they're and she's making a recipe that's been passed down for generations, I'm gonna say that's not eating like a slave. That's gonna be, I'm honoring the past. And so I think with veganism, going back to the whole thing about the pus sandwich, it's all connected. Does veganism do they have a marketing issue, like an outreach issue? Just because I feel like I'm eating my own meal. No one, absolutely no one. Why are you eating that puss sandwich? No one, absolutely no one. You eating like a slave. It doesn't mean that what you're saying is wrong, but if you're saying that if your end goal is to help people to understand what food is doing to them, I don't think that that's the right way to go around about doing it. I think whenever I mention veganism or vegans, to non-vegans, all of a sudden it's like a visceral reaction. Like, oh, that's why when you said you can't tell them it's like that, it's not the fact that I think that fundamentally people desire to be healthy. People want to eat a lot more vegetables. What they don't want, though, is they don't want to be preached at. They don't want to be talked down to. That they don't want to be scolded for something that they grew up eating. And so I really think that veganism has a really big messaging issue if they really want to get this widely adopted, because the reality is veganism is growing. Veganism is also very small. Vegans are also the loudest people in the room. Now, the part that I think that kind of stuck out with me was the way that he kind of talked about it and the justification behind it, because the more and more he actually spoke about it, the more sympathetic I could become, and I could understand the argument that he was making, because there are some things that we should be doing to foods and preparing them in different ways to make them perhaps a lot more healthful for us. Now, that's not required. We don't have to sanitize every single thing in our diet. And by sanitize, I mean make sure that it serves this big nutritious purpose for us. It can just be fun. It can just be food that is enjoyable. And to make that leap and say that we're eating like slaves because of that, I thought that was just a bit much. One thing that he pointed out in this episode too that I hope did not get lost was he said, first off, you have to understand that me and Kevin are boys. And when, we just will talk about things and we don't agree with something, we'll just go ahead and confront it and move on. But we're not carrying a lot of animosity towards each other. It's just more like, here's your opinion, here's my opinion. All right, let's go and grab a drink afterwards. You don't really see that as much anymore. Like, it's all or nothing. You got to be on my side or no side at all, or you're the enemy.
Can't be friends.
Yes, I respect the vegan diet. I respect, the sentiment behind it. I've expressed my concerns about the way that they go about their messaging, but here we are. We're on polar opposites ends of the spectrum when it comes to food choices, and one of them, and his, is attached to like cruelty for animals and whatnot. But we can still see each other.
Yeah.
We can still have a meal together. That was a big moment for me too when he pointed that out, because that seemed very natural to me. It was funny when that episode aired, it wasn't even like 5 minutes. The first comment or so, or one of the first two comments on there on episode was like, eating like a slave. Well, then why is Jesse there at the table?
I was like, really? That's the first comment? I mean, don't you want people like me listening to this conversation? I think for this third record scratch moment, maybe instead of diving into something that was aired previously, what do you think about something unreleased?
Yeah, let's do it.
I feel like we have a couple gems, but you got one you're thinking of?
As far as episodes go, I don't think there's anyone that's been as more like we've had a strong reaction than the latest one we did with the non-diet dietitian. And I loved it because there was just so many things in there. There's so many different perspectives, and that's what we want to do. When you sit on the dinner table, they're always like, you can't talk about politics, don't talk about this, don't talk about that, yada yada yada. That is true, but this is a different type of at the table. We want to force having some of those conversations that we may not feel comfortable with, and that's okay. This record scratch is when Christyna, didn't she kind of lightweight suggest that I was orthorexic because I was playing around with brownies? Here's this clip.
The idea that we always have to make everything so much better for us, I think it's just like that obsession with health again. And I'm like, let things be what they are. Let dessert be what it is. Stay away from my brownies with the beans. Let the brownie be a brownie.
Well, hold on. What's wrong with exploring other ways to make some of the decadent foods that we love?
Why?
Because I would like to eat a brownie every single day, but I just know that perhaps in the way that I like them.
Do you actually want to eat a brownie every single day?
Why not? First off, you're asking me this question, so I would say yes, because I have the biggest sweet tooth. If
As
you go in my
someone who
pantry,
loves chocolate,
yes,
and eats chocolate every single day, I don't necessarily want a brownie every day. I
want a brownie every single day.
Why not make them?
Because I think that would move me farther away from my wellness goals, because I know that the way that I feel afterwards is not that great.
So then you actually don't want it every day.
No. I still do, but I don't want to feel that way like every single day.
Yeah.
So if there is a way that I can maybe, like, all right, well, what's something that I can give me like the essence of it? And I've done that before. In fact, my first brownie was a sweet potato brownie that I would have post-workout. Stop! Don't you dare!
Because I think I genuinely, I'm gonna let you finish. I'm gonna let you finish. I'm gonna let you finish.
Okay. My first
You had the best sweet potato brownies of all time.
Go ahead and see what you got to say. You just roasted me. Tell me more of the sweet potato brownies. Listen, I had it as a post-workout treat with chicken, and it was so...
Go for it. I'm going to let you finish.
You are such a jerk. And it was good to me.
Yeah?
I actually enjoyed that because and I was using cacao. I was using sweet potato. I think I used almond flour in there, and so it was more like, all right, I would have a baked sweet potato, anyway after a workout. Put that with some cacao. It was like, all right, and a little bit of flour. So when I baked it up, and I did even put in some chocolate chips in there because I thought like the simple. What are you doing? You are such. She is roasting me the way my friends like. Can't wait to have this eggplant turkey, this eggplant sausage Kevin's making. But to me, that was okay. But now when I want the real brownie, I'll go get it. But I like that little chocolate fix every single day, and I don't think there was anything wrong with that. With doing that.
No, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong. My thing is, I really genuinely believe in letting things be what they are, right? So, like, if it's a brownie, let that brownie be a brownie. We're not going to ask the brownie to be a sweet potato. We're going to let her be a brownie. In the same way, I wouldn't ask cauliflower to be pizza crust. I want cauliflower to be cauliflower. Okay. I want that pizza crust to be pizza crust. In that, if you actually want brownies every single day, I think that because we don't allow ourselves to have things, we create this sort of like halo around it. So then we believe that we want it every single day. When in fact, if we really allowed ourselves, we would realize like, okay, eventually that brownie is just going to keep tasting like a brownie. I don't want something different. Yeah. In the same way, I love chocolate. I have chocolate every single day. But really that's like, at first it was like, I want a lot of chocolate. But then it became like, give me a handful of chocolate chips and I'm going out with my day and I don't really think about it. There's just like chocolate chips in my kitchen and I just grab and I go. But I say let the brownie be a brownie and have that sweet potato and, just the sweet potato up and go on and then have the brownie as a brownie later.
For me, that's fine. We can do that. I would like that because I also like the adventure of exploring with different foods and seeing what we can, come up with it.
Can I challenge you on something though?
Yeah.
Because you said I could challenge you.
Oh yeah, please.
The way that you were justifying this is the same way a lot of my clients with orthorexia justify their food things.
With what? With
the way that you're attempting to justify these sweet potato brownies of like,
okay.
But why not? And I'm like, why? Why does the sweet potato need to be there? Like a brownie was fabulous and wonderful the way that it was.
Let's go down this rabbit hole then, because I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, here's a sweet potato I love. I can eat them every single day. And me saying one day, not because out of health reasons, but because I'm curious, I wonder if I could make this into something else. I wonder if I can make this into sweet potato, because here's how this started. I hated oatmeal, eating that like in the morning time. I didn't like it. And then I said, one day, let me have the sweet potato. And I said, I'm going to break the rules of breakfast. This is my own, you know, and having this. And I loaded it up with some maple and some berries and some nuts. And I was like, oh, this is really good. And it just became like this dessert. And again, I have a sweet tooth. So the next step for me was just like kind of exploring different ways that I can reimagine a sweet potato. That was less concerned about like, like trying to make it healthier and much more like, how can I reimagine this into something that actually also fits into how I'm living my life daily? I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I think that's an important clarifying point.
Okay.
Right. Because if I only hear, but why not? Why can't I just do this? It's, it's better for me. It's better for me. Not saying that that's what you're saying, but I think that's a lot of the argument that the people make. And I'm like, but for what? To what end?
Okay.
That's always my question. To what end? Why? But if we're saying I want to get adventurous and see what's the limit to this thing, okay, that's totally fine. Because now you're just being an explorer. I encourage people to be explorer. But if our exploration is rooted in I need to make sure this is better for me, I need to make sure this is healthy. That's my
always
question.
Being
yes,
better for me. Okay.
That's where we hit into that where I'm like, this is sounding a little rigid, sounding very much in the same direction as that orthorexia that we were referring to earlier.
Okay, and
it's good clarifying.
Yeah, it is on both sides, right? Because the rigidity, being rigid in something is actually not necessarily a bad thing, because I can imagine she has so many acronyms behind her name. I can imagine that, the way that you were studying and whatnot to get all that stuff and writing papers and research.
I also have OCD, so.
Oh. so you can kind of understand.
I can get rigid.
Yeah, so
but I've also worked really hard to not be rigid.
Okay, but so you can understand that there is a fine line between, and there is a benefit too to being rigid in some areas, and when it comes to health, and this is an issue, and this is a topic perhaps where I think there is some, like some overlap with us, but it's also a place where like I'm not gonna bend. Like I actually, when it comes to people's wellness and they are having chronic issues, they're asking me questions, I am helping them to become a lot more disciplined. I am helping them to become a lot more mindful of what they're eating.
Me too.
And so
it just might look different.
There's a fine line there because I don't want to contribute to diet culture, but I also want this person to be well. I didn't expect to be challenged like that, and I do think there's something to be said about her approach, or just people like her. Actually, all of us in general. Like, if we can be so fixed on our own definition of things that we actually become what we're actually critiquing. And so it's the automatic assumption that somebody is, because they want to make brownies with the sweet potatoes, that they're orthorexic or they're trying to healthify it. No, I just want to play around with food and think it was pretty dope. And guess what? I can also eat this on my regular diet. Why is it required for us to actually have to explain our intentions with everything? Yeah. Why can't we just give each other grace until we learn more? But now it is a guilty until proven innocent.
You're going to explain where you're coming from so that people know it's okay to be creative with food and have fun. And especially if it brings you joy and happiness. It doesn't have to be labeled as a condition.
Right.
At that point,
I think one of the biggest things that this podcast has taught me about too is being able to provide that voice for other people that maybe aren't here at the table. Mm-hmm. So even though people are sharing certain things that I may agree with, there's still somebody out there. You've got to allow and understand that not everyone is going to see things your way. Yeah. And that is okay. I think even today we filmed an episode with a gentleman who was about goals, and in the very end of it, we're talking about how the obsession with some goals can be unhealthy. And I was like, well, why is it unhealthy actually? Yeah. What you call obsession, someone else may call discipline and determined. As much as possible, we should be peeling back the onion to make sure that we're giving deference to these different points of view.
All it's going to do is help us as the people that are on the podcast and the people that are listening to it, ultimately become better humans, because you're challenging your own viewpoints at that point. Either your viewpoint's going to get stronger after you listen to an opposing view, or you're going to soften your heart a little bit towards people that maybe you've always been turned off to. Either way, it's a chance to grow, and I feel like just giving an ear to listen is more valuable than just immediately saying, I'm never gonna listen to them, I can't believe he or she would say that. Right. So I think if anything, I'm looking forward to more conversations, more healthy conversations, more opposing views and things that challenge me as a human being.
I'm looking for the exact same. I'm looking for the thoughtfulness and being able to explore people's relationship with food, people just in general, in a brand new light. I think that what I'd like for this to be is like right in the intersection of podcasting and investigative conversations, right? So we're going to record the conversation and let y'all be there, but then you also get the benefit of us stepping away to kind of show you, all right, here's what they meant by this comment right here. So we get to break it down in the moment, so that way it maybe feels like, and it is, a much better viewing and listening experience for you once we can contextualize some of the ideas that are shared. But keep the ideas coming, keep the enthusiasm coming, and keep listening. Keep watching. You can catch up on all earlier episodes at atthetabletalks.com. You can also just search At The Table wherever you choose to listen to your podcast. And be sure that you are signed up and subscribed to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/fitmencook. Don't forget to ring that bell, ding, so that way you can be notified whenever we post hot new content, because again, we are going back to our original posting schedule in which we are sharing a podcast but also food, so you get a little bit of both. All right, the best of both. Until next time, I want y'all to keep it healthful, but of course never ever boring. And if you're listening to this right before the new year, be safe, be safe, be safe. All right, cheers.